All right. Well, should we go ahead and get started?
Sure.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I hope where you're at in our 4-state region here for Chicago Wilderness. I know some of us have snow on the ground, others have sunshine, maybe, I don't know, but we've had an interesting spring so far. But it's great to see everybody and to come together. Elizabeth Kessler here from the McHenry County Conservation District and Chair for Chicago Wilderness. And for those that are joining us for the first time, we are so glad that you're here. For those that are back, thank you for coming back. We have a robust meeting today, and I just want to remind that this is an opportunity to engage in thoughtful conversation, to go ahead and raise your hand or to be able to get involved in the conversation. Michelle, do you have your hand up? Do you have a question? So we want it to be interactive, right? And so we have a lot of information to share, but at any time, feel free to just raise your hand and we'll do our best, and Laura and those to recognize so that we can make sure that we can share this space with you. And we have that discussion that we really want to have. So again, thank you. And I just want to thank everyone that's worked together to prepare our agenda for today, Laura included. So the first order of business that we have is to approve the agenda. And I do have an additional item that was brought to my attention that we would like to add if we can. And that would be a discussion, and we can place it basically, I guess, towards the end, the 6.0 when we're talking about formal responses. But that is for the America the Beautiful for All coalition that has been created. And there is a deadline for this coming Friday for steering committee members to be nominated. And the suggestion came forward that Chicago Wilderness should have a seat and a recommendation. So I'd like to add that to the agenda. Is there anything else that anyone else would like to add to the agenda that we have for today? Stacy, please give your hand up.
Pertaining to those nominations, do you need anything from us? Or will we just discuss that during that item?
We'll discuss that if we can at 6.0 later on this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stacy. Anybody else would like to add anything to the agenda that we have outlined for this morning? Okay, there being none, I would consider and welcome a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting.
This is Kathy. Jerry, so moved.
Thank you very much, Kathy. We have a move. Do I have a second?
Yes, from Mike.
Go, Mike.
Mike, thank you so much. We have a second. Okay. Any further discussion?
Can I ask you guys a question? Do I have like a delay? Like the first word I say you can't hear?
It seems okay now. At first it did, but now it seems okay.
Thank you very much.
You're good. All right. So we have a first and second. Thank you. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor, motion by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. All right. We have an approved agenda for today, which moves us on to our consent agenda. And we have a few items that require action by the Executive Council, and that is the acceptance of our treasurer's report for the first quarter, which was provided in your information. And thank you, Mike, who serves as our treasurer. We have the approval of the Executive Council minutes for January 19th. And thank you, Nathaniel. Does an excellent job in preparing those detailed minutes to keep us informed and on task. And then we also have 2 new members looking to join us on the Alliance, A3 Environmental Consultants and Friends of the Illinois Nature Preserves. Before we take a motion in a second, let me go first back to Mike as our treasurer. Anything that you need to add on the treasurer's report for everyone?
As of now, no, the reports kind of sum it up. I mean, I can answer any questions, but nothing.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mike on the treasurer's report? Okay, and then for the minutes, Nathaniel, anything that you need to add to the minutes as presented?
I don't think so, unless anyone has any comments that they did not send to me, and otherwise it should be good.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, I will take a motion then to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Maggie, so moved.
Thank
Second,
you, Mary.
Schultz.
Thank you, Ralph. We have a second. Okay, any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor, motion by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Thank you. Our consent agenda items are approved. Okay, we'll now move on to our green vision update. And we're going to go through with the different committee reports just to kind of share where they're working on each of the different initiatives and goals. And it's been, again, a lot of work as we continue to move forward. Just for those, we had moved back with the ICL that helped us frame kind of our network and putting together through conversations. You're going to hear a little bit later this morning on our work to launch this green vision. And Jill, thank you for joining us here. I'll read. She is with PCI. And so we are going to talk a little bit about that after we get through our update. So let me turn it over now to the first group, Managing Healthy Landscapes, Patty Vitt and Eric Needy.
Hey, good morning. So I'm just going to be presenting some findings from a series of meetings that our group has had, just to provide an overview. There are basically 10 working streams for the Managing Healthy Landscapes group. We first, the first kind of iteration was to, from the larger group of all of the participants who were originally part of the kind of the natural resource management team across the Chicago wilderness area. We had a very large meeting and just kind of had an opportunity to kind of brainstorm, I guess, about the various pieces of management of healthy landscapes that are really important for each of these 10 working streams. And regardless of the group and your focus within the group, we wanted to get everybody's voices to hear kind of what they thought their priorities were. And so that's basically what this is kind of presenting. The next few slides, I'll just be presenting kind of the priorities for each of those working streams across all of the folks who are part of this team. And so you can see that while there are a few things that people are most concerned about, best management practices for invasive species, there's a lot of consensus, being kind of everybody thinks that they're all important. And that's kind of the theme across all of the priorities for managing healthy landscapes, across each of the kind of the work streams. But I would say that best management practices, and especially the cooperative weed management area, are two of the most important things in terms of kind of our regional approach to managing invasive species. And so that gives us a way forward for this working stream. We did have at one point at least a subsection of people who were part of a cooperative weed management area that has not really been updated. It's not a very active group. And so for this particular work group, we really need to, I think, focus on recreating a cooperative weed management area. And that's kind of the most important thing that this group needs to be doing. So the next slide, please. And for the prescribed fire, there is a prescribed fire council. That's kind of the general working group for this particular work stream. And some of the most important things that came out of it were education and collaborative burning opportunities, especially for volunteers. There are certainly some groups across CW that are really stepping up in terms of this. There's also a volunteer work stream that's very active, and they are actively working to create a well-trained group of volunteers. So Oak Ecosystems, this is primarily the Chicago Region Trees Initiative is working on this, but across all of the group, the larger group, increasing the land and then enhancing the restoration was by and large the most important priority. Next slide. And then the urban tree canopy, again, the Chicago Regional Trees Initiative is kind of taking the lead on this one. And there's not really a very clear priority for this particular work stream, but there are certainly a lot of things that people are working on in terms of this. And I would say the one thing that has happened lately that is really important is the sale of carbon credits that the CRTI has helped kind of bring into fruition through the city carbon credits. So that's actually a really exciting kind of development. Next slide. Climate adaptation, the biggest one here is nature-based solutions. There is an active group working on some of these questions. And actually, I'm a big part of that group, and we're aware of these particular priorities and are trying to work primarily on consequences for restoration at the moment. So next slide. Volunteer stewardship, as I said, there is a very active subgroup that's kind of focusing on volunteer stewardship, and their number one priority totally reflects the sense of the community, which is training and recruitment. They are certainly increasing both the number of trainings that are available and certainly the quality of the training that is available. And that's kind of across a lot of the member organizations broadly. Next slide. The Wildlife Task Force, the number one priority that the broader group thought that this work stream should focus on is kind of data collection and analysis. And that's a common theme throughout that has been seen throughout kind of this whole process that we've been working on, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end, but you can see that there are other priorities for that the broader group thinks that this work stream should be focusing on as well. Next slide. Priority species, again, monitoring, data collection, analysis, and funding are important for this group. And I would say that another really important thing that folks would like that we here as a group can kind of take note of is the priority plant list, and bringing that to approval, and final approval would be, I think, really help out in terms of our focus on priority species. Next slide. The grassland bird group. So broadly, I think this one by far and away, habitat management, understanding the needs of of birds and making sure that our management plans really broadly are conducted in support of birds. It was seen as by far and away the most important priority for this group. And then the monitoring and data collection analysis was seen sort of as a much more distant second priority. Next slide. So across this whole process, we definitely noticed that there was a lot of different voices that were talking about the need for a regional database. So we actually had a a session that really focused just on this, what people thought about a regional database, what they thought the needs were, et cetera. And these were, this is the kind of the most important pieces that people were looking for in terms of a regional database. Ease of use, that it's relevant, that it won't, fizzle out, that it's not redundant, it looks at invasive species and is shareable. Those are some of the most important priorities that came out of people's desire for a regional database. Next slide. And then I, wanted to kind of have folks rank their priorities for whether it was a regional database or just a simple data repository. And there was really, kind of, I wouldn't say,
Listen to this.
sort of
Get those emails,
a
all
winner
right?
for this.
Because I thought you were put on that.
Can
as
somebody
well.
mute?
The struggle.
Actually, can we all
Awareness.
mute ourselves?
Yeah, thanks. It's just hard to talk when somebody's in your ears. Thank you. So for this, I think the most important thing that came across is that there's really no clear direction about what a regional database or data repository would look like, but there was more interest in kind of two things. One would be a collection of standardized fields with data merged across boundaries, and by that we kind of mean management boundaries and organizations. And then the next would be just a simple data repository. And I think both of those are really interesting models, could be two ways that we try and move forward in terms of putting data together. So the next slide. And again, some of the prioritization for inclusion within this data, it's kind of regional monitoring for wildlife and plants was certainly important, but so was management. Next slide. And there was a series of kind of open-ended questions that we were looking at to just, trying to figure out what people, maybe a little bit more wanted to focus on. And one of the things that I think was really interesting, we did also at this meeting make sure that people had an introduction to the CW Hub, that they knew what it was. And I think, so the hub is for mapping resources. An ecological database could be part, but stand on its own. I liked the repository for orphan data. I thought that was kind of a really interesting thought. So there's a few other things on here, easy to filter and download, etc. I think there's one more slide, Laura. Yeah, so we did have a follow-up meeting of several of us met with the Nature Conservancy because they have spent the past couple of years trying to wrap their arms around getting data together from, sort of disparate management units and what that looks like. And what they really found was that it's kind of a complex undertaking, in part because there are a lot of gray, what I would call gray databases, kind of like gray literature. And again, it kind of mirrors this orphaned data that may be either in flat files like a spreadsheet. Some of them may still be on paper, etc. And I love the idea of trying to kind of really make a more formal outline, prioritization, way of moving this particular initiative forward, this work stream forward. We all agreed from this particular meeting that we thought a cafe would be a great place to try and get the start of a working group to really take this on. I agree with the kind of the voice before that with the CW Hub is great for spatial data, and where we have spatial data that has ecological attributes aligned well with it, I think the hub is the right place. But there is still room, especially for a repository for any of these gray data sets that we might be able to get. And thanks, Laura, she just put up the link for our next meeting, which is next week. And what we're going to focus on next week is really trying to capture a little bit more formally than we have up until now, the different work streams and who's heading what and kind of where they are with the priorities. So that part we're still kind of just starting our work, and I will definitely keep you updated as that moves forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Patty. Appreciate the report. Any questions for Patty from the council? Okay, we will then move on to Growing with Agriculture. Tim Brennan from the Farm Foundation.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so I'm really excited to share with you our plans for our first annual, maybe, field day that will focus on innovative agricultural practices. And the concept is to bring together conservation leaders, partners, farmers, just generally interested folks together to see some of the really great things that are happening in Will County. And these are, conservation ag practices, which is everything from agroforestry to cover crops to water management. We're really trying to grow the entire field of helping people understand that agriculture is moving in the right direction. And even here in the collar counties like Will County, there's a lot of progress. I first would like to recognize and thank our partners at the Will County Forest Preserve District, who have been wonderful partners and who are really helping us out tremendously, and our lunch sponsor. And we're going to see several spots along the way that are part of the Forest Preserves District land management programs. And so I'll wait here till we get back to our slides. Okay, I think we can go on to the next one. Oh, I guess that's the only
Yeah,
slide.
that's it. That's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all right.
I have your meeting information to drop in about your next meeting, which is upcoming. So I will drop that into the chat shortly.
Okay, terrific. So I'll just give you a quick walk through what we're going to do. We're going to meet in Moni at the Moni Reservoir, which is a really cool old locomotive steam engine filling station. So it's a beautiful pond. It's a very active part of the Will County Forest Preserve District. We'll meet there and board a bus or two buses, depending on how popular this is. We'll head to a conventional farm in Piatone and see some of their practices. They've been practicing, they're conventional farmers, but have been practicing a great deal of conservation work on their farm for the last 30 years. So we'll see the results of their work. We're then going to go over to a REIT. It's the Iroquois Valley REIT, who have just begun building an agroforestry farm, also in Piatone Township. And then from there, we're going to head and look at some forest preserved district sites, including Loughton Preserve, Jackson Creek Preserve. We're going to check out an organic farm run by the Yunker family. We'll have lunch at the Sugar Creek Admin Center, which is the Forest Preserve of Will County's main admin center. While we're there, we've got a really great rainwater runoff demonstration, and a big thanks to the Nature Conservancy for making that possible. We'll head to the Fidament Creek Reserve, and then back to Moni. We'll have a little reception at Moni. We're also going to have speakers on the buses talking about a variety of the practices that we're both going to be seeing and driving by, and they will be local experts, and so they'll be able to answer questions. We are reaching out and engaging with the Farm Bureau in Will County to get as many farmers as we can along the trip, and they should be able to answer questions as well. So we're really excited about this. There's still lots and lots of work to do. We also are in search search of sponsorship dollars. We need some sponsors for the bus, and we also have the opportunity to have a headphone system so everybody can hear at every stop. And so if we can get a sponsor for that, that would be great. And so if you have any more questions or anything, just let me know. But really excited about it. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Tim. Very exciting. Great work. Any questions for Tim?
Yeah, Tim, this is Ted Hafner. I'm just wondering what the cost for the busing and the headphones are so that we all know and can spread that out.
Sure. So each of the buses is about $2,500, and the headphones are about $1,100. And they ship to us. They're great. We recently used them on a field day we did down in the agricultural area of the Everglades, and I will tell you, they were a game changer for us. It was just so much better than standing there with a bullhorn trying to communicate to folks. So really hope that we can get those. And like I said, Forest Preserve is sponsoring the lunch, but we also would need a sponsor about probably around $1,000 for the evening reception if somebody was interested in that. So thanks for the question, Ted. I appreciate that.
Any other comments, questions from the council? Okay, we'll move on to our next goal group, and that is prioritizing green infrastructure. And Maggie Solis and Sarah Race.
Right. So is Sarah on the meeting?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so. Right. So, and I just heard from Jim, and he's flying someplace. I'm not sure where he is in the country, but anyway, so really the biggest thing that I wanted to bring to the executive committee is the fact that about a month ago, we got a message through Jeff Mengler, and he is on, and he will be more specific about this. But we got a message that Lauren Underwood had $10.5 million that, and her, it's the community project funding, and each one of our representatives in the area seemed to have a similar pot of money. And when I was looking back at what had been the money that had been spent for this current funding cycle, there was no green infrastructure in it. There was water quality projects, but they all seem to be revolve around gray infrastructure and pipe. And so real fast conversation with Jeff, we started to brainstorm as to how we can get ourselves in front of these local federal representatives so that we can benefit from this kind of funding. And my whole focus has been the projects are there, they're in the watershed plans that exist. And so immediately we went to Algonquin, where they have shovel-ready projects. And that's the problem, is that when this funding comes forward, there seems to be a lot of excitement about it. And yes, we should be able to do this, but we don't have shovel-ready projects. And so that is except for Algonquin. Problem is that Algonquin's shovel-ready projects that they were going to put an application in for was not in Lauren Underwood's district. So that kind of put a kibosh on working with her on that particular funding. There's several organizations that have come forward and are working together. And this again goes back to, if you're not in a partnership, you're not in the game. And we've got Laura Riley from our CW is present and active in our conversations, along with the Soil and Water Districts, Fox River Study Group, Fox Waterways, and Open Lands with Hackman Tax Project. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and let him really explain what happened and how, and then come back to me so that I can talk about some of the issues that we're facing. So Jeff, do you want to go ahead and be more specific about what these projects look like?
Sure, and I guess the big difference is from the community project funding that they had last year, there was not an opportunity for nonprofits. It was only for local governments. And there was not a category for conservation type of projects. And this year they added that. So we wanted to kind of pounce on that and think about getting green infrastructure things in front of them. I happen to be on an advisory council for Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, along with Lynn Campbell of the McHenry County Board and Sarah Vasca of Blue Stem. So we kind of get a little bit of an audience with her, and we keep bringing these things up. So we're getting it in front of her. For this round, there were 4 projects that I know of that we submitted through her. One is for in Antioch Township that would actually be an infrastructure project adding sewers, but the idea is to keep nutrients out of Catherine and Channel Lakes. There's one for daylighting a section of Crystal Creek that's been in pipe since the 1950s. There's one in Wonder Lake that's also for sewers to keep, again, the nutrients and pollutants out of Wonder Lake from failing septics. And then kind of our centerpiece was to take a parcel that's part of the Hackmatack National Wildlife Refuge core areas and apply for funding to do restoration on 100 acres of wetland and about 8,000 feet of what is now a straight line ditch that's tributary to the Nippersink, and get that re-meandered, much as we've done with other projects. We pointed out to them that we're leveraging other federal funds that they've done through 206. So it may be a new opportunity to work with sort of non-traditional partners and keep getting these projects in front of our representatives and tap into this new pot of funding.
Right, thanks. So one of the things that has happened since actually it was Monday, I went to a Lauren Underwood town hall meeting. And I was very specific with my question, mostly to lead her towards the fact that we want her to support any green infrastructure projects. But what really came out of what I realized is when I use the word green infrastructure, she pulled in, yes, she's very much in support of it, but then she started talking about clean energy and all of the other issues that sustainability, the whole umbrella of sustainability, holds underneath. I think what we need to do is get in front of our legislators in person, bring them lunch, sit down, even if with their staff, because it's their staff who's actually going to say yes or no to the projects, and teach them. They don't know. We can't ask them to fund these projects if they don't understand really the benefits, the economic benefits, the economic development benefits, the clean water benefits and the flooding benefits that come from green infrastructure. Because if they're confusing that word with all of the other environmental issues, it's going to get diluted. So for our committee, which is prioritizing green infrastructure, that's a direction that I think that we're going to be able to go in. So if anybody has any questions about that.
Maggie, I would actually love to be able to talk with you about this further. The US EPA has also historically had the same struggle in the types of projects that came before it in SRF, especially at the beginning, but it still does as far as being able to expand green infrastructure as a subset of SRF, and perhaps some of the language that they've developed over the years to be able to demonstrate why this is such an essential part of that could be useful in education.
Absolutely. And Stacy, because you are with Open Lands, and that seems to be a project the Hackmatack project is one that we're getting behind and pushing forward. It would be good to have you in this conversation. Just start setting up meetings with each one of our representatives, so they know what we're asking for, and show them the economic benefits, because oftentimes the benefits, the economic benefits aren't pushed hard enough, so that when municipalities are looking at their budgets, they understand the power of green infrastructure. So more on this later.
Thanks, Maggie. I wanted to add to this is the Growing with Agriculture, or Growing Chicago meeting, which is falling under Goal 3, led by Sarah Race, Caroline Hernandez, and Iris Caldwell, as part of the Pollinators Project. We'll be having a kickoff meeting on April 28th. And it's an opportunity to advance the work in the region. And I'm dropping the invitation information in the chat. And if there are any folks who are working with restoration and rights of way, please reach out to Caroline Hernandez and join this conversation on April 28th. I invite you all to be a part of that discussion. There we go. Oh, I will drop that in a second, but we'll move on from here.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate that additional information. Okay, our next group, Conserving Land for Biodiversity. We have Ben Habither and Kathy Garrity co-leading this working group.
Yes, thank you. This is Kathy, and I'll be brief because we don't have much time left in this section. But so we have been focusing on two different areas. One is the use of 30 by 30 to add additional conservation lands, but we've changed up the 30 by 30 definition a bit, and you'll be hearing more about that later from Ben. So I'll just table that for now, but there's lots of good information and work being done on that. And then there's several different priority needs that we've identified, and I tried to post that. I'll try to post them in the chat and not spend too much time on them. But the priority needs for moving this along is, we identified that we needed a communications campaign for increasing conservation lands, and with PCI on board now, we're going to be moving ahead with that. We also need policy support, just making sure that municipalities understand the importance of having natural habitats and green spaces. We need to rank priority areas for conservation, and a lot of that work is already being done, but we want to keep a close eye on that. We want to work on relationships with willing sellers. So if there are pieces of property that we've identified that are important to have protected, we want to make sure those relationships are developed before it becomes too late. And then the other piece, we really want to make sure that there's no loss of habitat, like with Belbo Prairie. So we want to put together a rapid response team who looks out for those sorts of things that are happening on the landscape. And that's it. Thanks. Feel free to ask questions if you have any, or write to me later. Be happy to answer any. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Kathy. Great ideas being shared there. Any comments, thoughts, questions for Kathy? Okay, hearing none, we will continue moving forward and go to increasing equitable access to nature. And we've got Tish, Radhika, and Amy. Who is going to lead that? Who's with us this morning?
Okay, they were not able to join us as well. So their next meeting will be on Friday, and they have taken their meetings to a quarterly process, and they're going to have a community spotlight this month. They will be spotlighting Oh Boy Reed, and have further work to refine their goal and their partnership diversification for their team. So I invite you all to join them at this meeting. I'm going to drop that registration into the chat as well, but know that they're looking for active participation and increased partnership through their committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, then we'll move on to taking climate action. Ted.
Yep, thank you. Good morning, everybody. We've been pretty busy. I know we have goals. I know we all have been trying to reach out to coordinate goals. Our focus lately has been on a couple comment letters, the IDNR letter that Debbie will talk about. Excuse me, but we also had our own letter that I sent out for coordination a couple weeks ago to the city of Chicago on their climate action plan. And we sent that in and I got a response from that. So they will be logged. And basically the stance of that letter was that we took them to task a little bit for focusing so much on electrification and retrofitting and not focusing on nature, but they did have a couple nuggets in there, and we very vociferously offered to partner with them on those initiatives. And we know a couple people, we had some pre-meetings on that comment letter, so we know a couple people in that office and we have their ear a little bit. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. We also have the education and sort of advocacy portion of CW. Sorry, they're washing my windows here. I can't do anything about that. And that's been pretty successful as well. And I really want to thank Alicia Sanchez from TNC, who has been spearheading that for us. She's sent out a number, I'm sure you've all seen them. Some have been coordinated through the Climate Committee, some through others. But that's been really helpful. And I know she's working on sort of a unique definition of advocacy as it pertains to CW in the Government Relations Committee that she sort of coordinates with on the side. So that's really interesting, and we've been a good test source for that. What we're focusing on now is we've had 3 quarterly meetings. I need to come up with a schedule for the rest of the year, and as soon as we have that, I will post it, but I'm going to try to sneak them in where meetings don't exist yet. And really now what we're looking for is personnel. We have goal leads, I think more or less sorted out, but we need goal lead assistants. So I've been working on one-on-one conversations to get the remaining assistant positions in place so that we can really move forward. The other thing in our last meeting that we have done is we've picked the lowest hanging fruit for each of our goals. Education goal and mitigation goal are combining. So that'll be exciting. And then that came out just a couple weeks ago, and I haven't had time to analyze those results yet. So I will give them to you in the next update. Any questions for me? Nope. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Michelle, and the working group. Appreciate that. And then next is protecting healthy water. Did we miss healthy water?
No, that's great.
I'm
Thank you
sorry,
very
the
much.
slide got dropped. Thanks, Stacy.
No worries. I thank you very much. Matthew Santagata could not be here today, so I'm actually going to give a briefing for him. We went through previously, as you all know, a long and arduous process to really rethink how we capture and measure all types of water throughout the 4-state ecoregion, and developed a long list of metrics. We have since culled through those metrics to determine which ones are reasonable to collect in the 4-state region. And we have a list that we are preparing with the help of Craig Schillinglaw as part of the data hub, to determine what data is already being collected, what data could realistically be collected across the full expanse of the ecoregion, and then what aspirational data is probably a good idea and potentially could be collected. That will result in 3 tiers. One, which is a short list of metrics for each of our 6 principles. A second tier, which is viable ones that we would like to determine whether or not they could be collected. And the third is a wish list, understanding that the information provided by the full expanse of members is valuable, and really evaluating how we collect data right now and better ways of measuring into the future. So we don't want to lose the lessons learned by a lot of the experts in how our data falls short. But we do want to ensure that we proceed with an index with what we have available right now. So it'll be an evolving process that we are going to return to our members shortly.
Thank you, Stacy. Any comments, questions? Okay, then we'll turn it to mapping and metrics with Mark Bowman and Mark Johnson. Any updates from you guys?
Just a few quick ones. Mark can't be here today. I did put the link to the hub in the chat again, and a reminder that it has gone public. And if you look at it, you'll see we've done a number of editorial and design and content updates, and we continue to think about it. We meet every 2 weeks. We open invitation to join us, of course. We are continuing to sort of build some support, including we have a special thanks to NICOR for funding an intern, and also the support that is on its way to help support goal teams and preparation for Congress. I just wanted to put it's a wonderful team, kind of a core team these days. A couple of folks on the team have done a lot of good work to sort of support the work of the goal teams. Mark Johnston, you mentioned, and Craig, definitely Dave Holman, and Casey Sullivan, folks who are just keep bringing up new ideas and adding them in. One kind of new-ish idea, and just seed this here, is some of the interactive maps on each of the hub pages we're working those through to make them as effective as possible as a landing page. But you know, every map tells a story, but sometimes you have to have a story map to tell it even better. And so we're going to be working to create story maps, both at the level of Chicago Wilderness to support the 30 by 30 conversation, and ideally a story map for each of the 7 goals that potentially could be part of a rollout of the conversation at the Congress, or if not before. So those are some of the things I just wanted to say. Those are live thoughts, and we're shaping them now as to how to get that done. But if you don't know, story maps are really, there's some great examples in the region of folks who've done this. Nature Conservancy did it on their Greenprint project, and it can be very effective storytelling mechanisms that incorporate the maps in the process. So that's the basic report. Please feel free to get in touch with me or Mark Johnson or anybody else on the team. Anybody else here who wants to add anything? Jack Brunner? I think we're good.
So Mark, this is Maggie.
Hey, Maggie.
Question.
Yeah.
Having worked in land development for so many years, comprehensive plans are the roadmap for development. Do you see this as becoming a real good tool for each municipality to add to their comprehensive plans?
I would like to think so. I would say that hasn't been our priority at the moment, but definitely work with the municipal scale, and of course the regional planning entities are part of this planning process here. You know how great it was when the green infrastructure vision was added to the GO-TO 2040 plan, and that became part of a working tool for planners across the region. I think we might want to consider how best to, as you were saying before, how to reach out to elected representatives, but also how better to reach out with these tools and resources that we have at the municipal scale. So we've got a lot on our plate, and it's in there. And I think we'd welcome any ideas on how best to do that.
Well, I just can say from our committee prioritizing green infrastructure, just for our work ahead of us, it's going to be an invaluable tool. And I like to think even further and say that each municipality then will adopt it. So I really appreciate all that hard work. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Maggie. And let's talk more about how we can work best together and support the work of Goal 3. That's great.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments, questions? All right, excellent to see all of this coming together. We're weaving a great story, and I love the use of those story maps. I think that's one of those things that we've been trying to get all the working groups to share with us from a communications perspective, so that we can push information out and tell what's going on across the region. Laura, you were going to give just a brief update of the links and resources that we do have available. You've created up for everybody to have easy access.
Yes. Okay. So we created sort of a working group goal team single page PDF file that has links to all of our teamwork. It has their meeting schedules. It has their archive meeting notes and files, and a master list of all the committees and the chairs of those committees, as well as the opportunities. So I will drop that link into the chat, and I welcome you all to take a look at it. And as always, our community calendar page on our website also features the links that I've been dropping in for our local, our teams meetings and registration and ways to get involved with that. So I welcome you all to take a look and think about your staff, think about your capabilities, and think about how you might be able to get involved and support this great work that you've just heard about. So thank you very much. I'll get that in the chat in 1 second.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate that. Okay, the next conversation that we're very excited, and I just want to share my thanks. If you recall, at our last meeting when we were together back in January, the Executive Council agreed for us to move forward and pursue solicitation of proposals to assist us with our branding strategy and communications engagement plan for the Green Vision. A special thanks to Jim Anderson, David Schimberg, Laura Riley, Maria Sadowski, and myself sat on this review group. We received 7 proposals from the documents that were sent out, a very competitive process. We did interview 4 of the proposals received, and then we are happy we brought forward to the steering committee and our Green Vision goal leads our recommendation to move forward with Public Communications, Inc. And Jill is with us this morning with her team, Jill and Sharon. And so I'm going to be pleased to share, let her take the floor here and kind of outline who they are. She's no stranger to Chicago Wilderness. So Jill, I'll let you take it from here, and then we'll share afterwards what our next steps are.
Elizabeth, thank you very much. And good morning, everyone. It is delightful to be here with you this morning and to be re-engaged after many years, having been a part of the team that launched the original Chicago Wilderness many, many years ago, and have been involved with or been peripherally engaged with the work of Chicago Wilderness through my other activities in my free time, serving on the board of Open Lands, being a commissioner on the Illinois Nature Preserves Commission, being an advisor with the Friends of the Illinois Nature Preserves Commission that you just brought on board here earlier in the meeting. Exciting to see so much activity pulling in the same direction to protect and celebrate and get the public to be engaged with the amazing biodiversity within our region. We are looking at beginning right away. We had our first meeting just last week with Laura and Elizabeth, kind of beginning to scope out and refine that to-do list, the work. I know that we would like to have a committee, a task force. This is not a long-term commitment, but one that we would love to have a committee that could be a working group that we can use as advisors as we move through, because this is going to be a real front-loaded effort because we need to do a lot of research. We're going to do an assessment of what communications Chicago Wilderness is doing now, has done in the recent past, so that we can, based on that analysis, and then also member needs. So there will be a survey that we will engage current members with to hear best practices that they appreciate, the things that they feel there might be voids. So many of you in your reports in the last hour have really touched on the importance of communications and very specifically needing communications, whether it's, as Kathy mentioned, a rapid response team to save pristine areas that are under threat, which we know, being saved in perpetuity doesn't mean that we don't have to continue to protect our natural heritage, even if they are protected with a nature preserve status or other protections. So we are here to help kind of bring that outside perspective, to pull those opportunities together and shore up some of the challenges and address those, all culminating with a brand refresh that will help in launching the green vision in a much more public way, but also not just externally. It is to also build deeper engagement with current Chicago Wilderness members, as well as prospective Chicago Wilderness members. It's to show and spotlight the amazing work that's being done and that people want to re-engage if they're kind of been sitting on the peripheral, or perhaps they don't know all the things that are going on, and which we want to correct that, and to be a part of something incredibly powerful, which Chicago Wilderness is. But it is not widely spread, and that's what we want to do with a refresh of the brand based on the research and discovery we'll be doing, creating messages that are going to be built on message frameworks that will be built on that research, and then implementing that. So at that, I will pause and take any questions. Well, let me give a shout out to our team. We have developed over a period of time. I sometimes I'll take the blame or the credit because of my personal passion for environmental issues. That we have an entire sector in our agency that is dedicated to conservation and environmental issues, a team of 5 people that also then are supplemented by our in-house design and our in-house digital strategy group and digital strategy and implementation. And they will be all a part of the resources tapped for supporting your program. So what are there any questions that I would be happy to answer, or concerns, or anybody who would really love to work with a very engaged, dynamic agency that is here to help you? But as much as we would love to work with all of you, there are 46 on this call, smaller group would make it go a little smoother, but we promise to communicate well and frequently on how the progress is going.
Just one super quick comment, Jill. First of all, what fun to have you back. I remember those early days of Chicago Wilderness in your backyard. The next presentation will really talk about the green vision aligning so well with 30 by 30 and America the Beautiful. So it'll be nice to figure out how to make some of those connections possibly. But thank you for doing this work.
Well, Debbie, it's great to see you and wonderful, and thank you for your comments. But you bring up a critical point. There are many organizations that are doing impactful work. And so where does Chicago Wilderness find its podium from which to speak? Because you are made up of organizations that have their own communication strategies and plans. And while a challenge, it's also very exciting to bring all of that energy into the Chicago Wilderness brand and the Chicago Wilderness impact of the work that you are doing, as evidence of the reports today, and to bring more unification with what other organizations are doing or other movements like 30 by 30, it'll be important that we never consider Chicago Wilderness in a silo. Quite the contrary, Chicago Wilderness with tentacles everywhere and connections that lift everyone up, its members, as well as the collaboration among those members making an impact. So thank you for raising that point.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Jill. And I think as we look, one of the things that we've identified, and Maria, who has been working with the Alliance over the last several years and helping to put our public face out there through local media, through social media, through an update of our website, through all the communication links that we saw for our working groups. It is really important that we ourselves look into our own organizations that are Chicago Wilderness and tap into some of our marketing and communication professionals that may be able to help us leverage, because once this work gets done, one of the things is we want it to be sustainable. And so as we get these tools, we're going to ensure that not only, since we have a limited staff on Chicago Wilderness, it's all of us that needs to pull together and to help lift those voices with that unified. So that's what we're hoping to see here, that we leverage the value of all of our members to bring this out into fruition here. And so we have an accelerated time frame that we're working through this. So again, looking for volunteers. So if you know someone, reach out, please. We will get you in this working group. We will also then, we're continuing to work through the agreement. And so we did not have this item actually budgeted for in our approved budget. But again, the group was to go out and forward to proceed with this. We do have fund reserves, so we are working through. We had a range that was provided to us, so we'll be tweaking all of that and with the steering committee to execute that. Any questions, I guess, from our members here today?
Laura, can I'm sorry, Elizabeth, can you talk to the timeline?
So I believe, and Jill, you can help from our discussion, our goal was to get working on this because we wanted to have, and it was a very ambitious, but we're optimistic that this would be something to align with our upcoming Congress this fall. That was kind of where we hope to be. And so I think it's going to be what we discover. Jill, if you had time to refine some of our thoughts on that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We know that that's an opportunity for the community to come together for the first time physically, and so it's in a way that there's so many. I think every one of our clients are going through, much like we do in our lives, transition, post-pandemic transition. We've reflected on coming out the other side. We've reflected on where we are with our organizations and who we're working with and how we're working. And so it's the perfect timing for this. And to be honest, the Congress gives us a very good target for having these things set and ready to go as a rollout and quote invitation. Elizabeth is spot on when she says that, you know, this is not just about the launch of the Green Vision. It's about putting together a strategic communications approach with a refined message that builds on what you have been doing. But as we look, you've been in a reactive mode, and we want to put you in a proactive mode that carries you forward far beyond this project contract, that it will help you to find strategic communications opportunities and to amplify your voice and reach. That's our ultimate goal. The timeline, we want to have as much of this in place for the Congress, leading up to the Congress, as we can.
Which means starting yesterday?
In a way, yes, but it's people have given us less time and we've made it work. But yeah, thank you for pointing out the ambitious goal there.
Thank you.
Any other comments, thoughts?
I have one comment, and Jill, it's great to see you again. I'll echo Debbie's thoughts. I'm getting goosebumps, just like I did 25 years ago, as we stayed on point. We had discipline with your leadership in developing our communication strategies and in the messages themselves. And I remember the time leading up to the rollout, what an exciting time it was and how impactful it was when we launch that. And if we can just create a fraction of that enthusiasm here, we'll be in good shape. So looking forward to working with you for the next few months on this. It's going to be fun.
It will, John. Thank you very much. And yes, we still follow that very strong practice, but have many more tools in which we are calling the on. We didn't even have social media at the time that Chicago Wilderness was launched. So think of what we can make happen now. It's very exciting. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Jill. Anybody else from the council? All right, we will move then on, because I'm seeing in the chat here, what is this 30 by 30? And so we've got a great presentation here that's going to help answer those questions. And I'm going to turn it over to Ben Habither, who is going to lead this presentation. And he's been working with Debbie Moskovitz from the Field Museum with many others here to pull this together. So Ben, take it away.
Yeah, happy to do so. And yeah, we got a pretty quick overview on this, but I think it'll answer that question. And like you said, this is the work of a lot of others. And so before I even get going here, I want to recognize Debbie Moskovitz again, Stacy Myers. You'll recognize some of the slides in this presentation, a lot of numbers from Dave Holman. And then Debbie will talk about some of the comments that we finalized for IDNR, and we had input from Jim Anderson, Ed Collins, and others. I just don't have them all written down. So thank you to all the folks who have been contributing so far. And I think that was a good segue, John, your comments talking about the excitement 25 years ago with Chicago Wilderness. I mean, I wasn't here, I'm so wet behind the ears, you know. But I feel a lot of excitement about this. We have 30 by 30, and kind of what I've been doing as Director of Natural Resources at Forest Preserve District of Kane has been, I don't want to say frustrating, but it has not felt like enough. So some of the numbers that you're going to see here absolutely feel like enough, and it's exciting time. So what we're looking at here is creating, you know, mobilizing our green region, and it's for everybody. And we look at the next slide. We've got, you know, 8 million acres across Chicago Wilderness as we define it now, about 9.5 million people. We're making recommendations that work for everybody that lives here, and what I call the non-human preserve users, everything else as well, wildlife corridors, the waters of this whole area. You'll hear us talk about land, but I don't want it thought that we're not considering all the waters that are within these areas as well. Next slide, please. We've got, through the Green Vision, which has been a great direction for Chicago Wilderness, we're already aligned in a way that, you know, I don't want to say shovel ready, but we really are with what we've been setting up. You can see how the boundaries here, this is the 7.7 million acre area, but if you look at the next slide, you can see what's roughly 8 million acres across the 4-state region here. And this has been representative of how we've done conservation to date. You know, the preserving the best or protecting the best and restoring the rest kind of model. And these are how those numbers line up. I'm hesitating because I forgot to define 30 by 30 as we go here. 30 by 30 originated as a global collaborative, similar to the IMPC or the IPCC comments on climate change. A collaborative group of scientists came up with what percentage, as we continue to destroy so much of the globe, what percentage is the amount that will sustain the rest of the world. And that number kind of came back about 50%. If you look at E.O. Wilson's book called Half Earth, he talked about this is a number that will ensure that kind of humanity and life as we know it can continue. And it's an incredibly daunting number, but to have milestones along the way is where 30 by 30 came from. And so protecting 30% of the world by 2030 is what 30 by 30 means. What it means in the US is America the Beautiful. It's the bill that came across, but it's the implementation of 30 by 30 in the United States. So we're moving in closer to what does it look like in the Chicago Wilderness region, and then making comments on how this can be implemented at a state level. And you'll see some other figures in here that are omitting our Wisconsin, Indiana, and Michigan areas, but that's because some of the funding that's proposed to come down through America the Beautiful is happening at a state level. So I just wanted to put that caveat in there before we go on. So thanks for bearing with me. Sorry, I missed those. So our area now, Chicago Wilderness, we're defining as 7.9 million acres. Of that, about 580,000 are conservation areas and parks. As the co-chair for Goal 4, this is kind of what we've been calling the classically conserved lands. And when I joined there with that group, we were thinking, how much more do we need to get to that 30% goal? And if we were to look at this classic model of conservation, we would need an additional 1.8 million acres. We look at the next slide, please. This is what it means in just the Illinois portion, that same 30%. We're still looking at 1 million acres for the whole area. So we tried to figure out a way to quantify that. So if we say, okay, we need to activate all of our forest preserve districts, park districts, and different kind of taxing bodies to conserve this land and protect it, we'd still need another 375,000 acres. When we start looking at, I mean, that number feels a little difficult to conceptualize, but when we actually break down, what does that mean per year? What have we done across this region to date since the inception of Chicago Wilderness? You're looking at about 2,000 acres a year. So current models of conservation or the current rate or pace, it's not working. It's not going to do it. I love what I do every day, but we need to figure out how to increase the rate. And along comes 30 by 30. This is the direction we need to go. What it means in Kane is we have about 34,000 acres of protected natural area across the county. About 23,000 of that is the Forest Preserve District. Just to get to 30% would be 100,000 acres just in Kane alone. And that's not going to work with the model we have now. So we have to figure out another way to get there. Take a look at the next slide, please. So rather than look at 30 by 30 as let's protect 30% in this classic model, we want to look at all the different land types across the area and what would 30% of each of those look like. I think this is big enough to read, but we're looking at conservation land, park land, ag land, which you probably picked up on the slides, and you live in Illinois, so you know that's a big chunk of the answer here. Undeveloped land, and then the already built land. Debbie was able to put this slide together. You can see we've got columns on which goal that each of these apply to, but these start breaking out the acreages that each goal group would have to do or address to get there. And it starts getting a lot more doable. So when we look at conserved land or conservation land, we're down to, is that the 147 number here, Debbie? Maybe the 225, but
the next slide has Illinois only, if you want.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right here. So we have done the math for the whole area. The next one is what we're looking at for Illinois, as it applies to the comments that we made to IDNR's task force on 30 by 30. So that 55,000 number, that's a lot more doable. And that's what we are going to be recommending and what we think we can do just in Illinois. You can see that the overwhelming number here is agricultural land, but if 30 by 30 is motivating, the huge change that's happening in ag with regenerative ag and figuring out different models of sustainability, it's already happening right now. And so it's a big number, but we're already moving across that area. The Goal 2 group can tell you that, but everything we're doing at the individual forest preserve districts as well, and that we have, there's a lot of public land under tenant farming in the state as well. And we're able to write these ways that these leases that work for the land also work for the farmer. And so we've already found a lot of these solutions and we're working on them. And so I wanted to mention that. And Chicago Wilderness has really been a model already for how this is working. So we didn't have to invent a lot of new recommendations, but document what we've been doing in this region and how it could be applied to the state. And I think that's what we've got coming up here, if you want to take that, Debbie.
That's great. So what we agreed on in the last steering committee meeting was to have a statement that goes to IDNR from Chicago Wilderness. I don't know if all of you were able to look at that draft right now. It's about 10 pages. It seems long, but actually what it does is looks at what would happen. How can 30 by 30 be applied and tracked in Illinois? And how does our green vision then advance with this? Laura, if you can go back to the previous slide, it'll be easier to talk about. The paper right now, the draft that would go to IDNR, goes through each of these acreages in decreasing order and talks about what would we need? What are our biggest challenges? How can we overcome them? How would we track success? And going one by one, if you start with the more than 800,000 acres, almost 1 million acres from agriculture, the groupings that the categories that are being proposed by Chicago Wilderness, thanks to Ed Collins, would be conventional agriculture. This is based on soil health. Conventional agriculture, where you're losing soil and losing soil health. Sustainable agriculture, maintaining soil and maintaining soil health. And regenerative agriculture, where you're actually building soil health, and of course, building habitat. So biggest challenge there is how do we get farmers to understand the huge benefits of regenerative ag for the farmers themselves and everybody? And how do we build a program of incentives that moves from conventional to sustainable to regenerative, so that we have 807,000 in sustainable and regenerative agriculture by 2030. The next biggest one is the built land, 456,000 acres. We heard Maggie talk about the real importance of green infrastructure there. We have such huge opportunities to get almost 500,000 acres in green areas, from native plantings and residential yards to campuses to rights of way to green roofs to all kinds of different things. And there we just need a real massive way of looking at these expansive networks of green corridors and how to motivate people to get there. We need to come up with the groupings here. What would qualify an acre as green? What proportion of native plantings? But that's the work moving forward. If you look at the next biggest, it's 93,600 acres under conservation land. We're saying that by restoring acres to ecological health, they contribute enormously to the goals of 30 by 30. And there, what we need is to be able to scale up the capacity for land management agencies to do that work. The metrics there that were proposed are no restoration, restoration underway, restored and under management. And we'd want to move the 93,600 acres into restoration underway and fully restored. And then when we go on to the 55,500 acres additional lands and waters, as Ben said, that's a stretch. But we have 30 by 30 and America the Beautiful. So why not stretch right now? And why not think about a visioning retreat of how do we get there? Let's do it. It's 7,000 acres. It's 8 years. We can do it. This is the moment to act. And finally, the almost 20,000 acres in city parks. This is the opportunity to have vibrant native plantings in city parks, things, the Burnham Wildlife Corridor that once was just lawn, and have every neighborhood be within 10 minutes, half a mile of a thriving green park. So these are all the opportunities that we have with 30 by 30. The hub, Chicago Wilderness Hub that already exists is a great model for how to track all of this, and interactive maps that would allow us to get there. So if you go to the next slide, please, Laura. The draft that you have right now is the draft that has gotten input from every single goal team. It was a lot of people putting their thoughts to it. It came together magically by today, and I hope that everybody feels good about that moving forward to IDNR. We should have a discussion about that. But next slide, Laura. There were people who were saying the recommendations to IDNR under each goal are generalized. It's what it would take for us to implement 30 by 30 by the 30% by 2030. And should we have specific recommendations to IDNR, an appendix with very specific things that IDNR might be able to do to get us there. The ones that you see here are 8 recommendations that came from Jim Anderson, strategic land acquisition, incentivizing voluntary conservation easements, conservation restoration efforts, and accelerating collaboration-led conservation efforts. I'll go to the next slide, Laura, and then Jim, you may want to talk more about these. These are all specific recommendations. I have had others, Stacy and others, say that they would have a longer list of specific recommendations. Jim, you're welcome to talk more about these. What I would love to hear from the group is, how do we collate those specific recommendations, and do we stay at the more general level or at the very specific level, and have it as an appendix to the draft that was sent to all of you? So would love to hear all of your thoughts, comments, and recommendations. Thank you.
So since I put these forwards, I will give you, I've been listening to both national and IDNR listening sessions. And in my opinion, most of the people that are being asked or are requesting to speak and give comments are actually doing, specific recommendations. And I don't think this is just IDNR. This is everybody in collaboration. Certainly, we want to take advantage of existing programs that are working and continue those, because I think many of these are really important. But the Civilian Climate Corps is something that Senator Durbin and Jerry Edelman and others have really been pushing. And so I just think we should be highlighting those things. And, it's great that what Debbie did is laying out what are our needs and what are some of the actions that we can take. But I think we need to be specific to IDNR's 30 by 30 plan and say, here's what we think, we should be working on. And so I don't think we should limit it to 8. We should limit it to what we think is appropriate.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Debbie, and for all your work. This is an opportunity here for comments. And so we're today specifically, great to see all of this, the 30 by 30 being shaped. Ben, great presentation. Love the analysis. Again, we're a 4-state region, and in our discussion that we had with the goal group and with the steering committee is there is an ask on the table for us for IDNR because they're looking to have comments. But then we do want to follow up. We're understanding that this is important to realize our full vision is also with Indiana, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and that's part of that engagement process. So this does not mean we're just focused on Illinois. We're starting here with this larger conversation, and it will continue. Hands up. Let's see, Maggie.
Yeah, one of the additions, as I'm looking at this, the recommendations is, it's mind blowing, really, when we think about what can be done, what is going to be done. One of the places that I think we've got to focus on so that we speak a language that other stakeholders may understand, and that's economics, that's finance. How much money is being saved for municipalities' stormwater issues by taking care of the oaks or the trees within their community? How much money is being saved by increasing our wetlands conservation strategy? And I'm just looking at number 7. So, I think we've got to start putting some dollar amounts, and I know it's been done, but I think we need to bring it into our messaging so that the folks that will say, oh, a bunch of tree huggers are trying to do it to us again. No, people who are concerned about our tax base are showing us some tools that actually work. So we've got to get better with the finances on the economics of it.
Thank you, Maggie. Stacy, you're next.
Jim and Maggie, I agree. I agree with you, Jim, that in addition to really demonstrating that this is viable and that this meshes well with the green vision as far as being something that we could accomplish through what we're developing through this initiative with Chicago Wilderness, I do think that having specific policy recommendations is important. I think as we evolve this letter quickly, connecting, a number of us are on the 30 by 30 steering committee, which is developing policy recommendations for 30 by 30. I know that Lindsay, for instance, sits on the IDNR listening session committee, which is wonderful. I wholly recommend that we develop policy recommendations that make sense for Chicago Wilderness membership, including, if possible, funding methods and support for existing programs, support for how we think those existing programs can be evolved. I think those figures, as well as that information, does exist. I agree with you on justification, Maggie, regarding ecosystem services valuation. To the extent that we have it, it's valuable to demonstrate the return. I think coordinating with PSCC and IEC on our recommendations while making them distinctly ours would be important to ensure that we're consistent with what our brethren are proposing across the board.
Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate that. Let's see, up next, John, your hand is raised. Ragnar.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. And I'm not going to make any suggestions on a letter that's intended to go to the Illinois DNR for obvious reasons, but I will comment on this because I have read it, and it will, if it comes to us in something resembling this form, it'll be the most detailed and explicit set of recommendations that we've received. And I think it would be something that we could extrapolate out to the entire state. It goes beyond a lot of the comments we've received, which are along the lines of, yes, you should do 30 by 30. And it gives a formula for how to do that, how to really get to that point. So And as I read it, a couple of things struck me too. One, it's really the beginnings, good beginnings of an action plan for Chicago wilderness for 30 by 30. And as I think back on, our foundational documents, like the Biodiversity Recovery Plan and the Climate Action Plan for Nature, this is a bit of an updated action plan for those documents as well. The strategies are so consistent with what is in those documents. This could be our roadmap for the next 8 years. So it could serve that role as well. It's really like a framework for planning, for implementing, or conservation delivery, and then for monitoring and tracking accomplishments as we go forward. It's really a wonderfully conceived document. I'll just add one other thing, and maybe some of you have seen this. Last week, the Biden administration announced $1 billion that they're calling the America the Beautiful Challenge, right? And this is part of the Infrastructure Investment in Jobs Act. That was that massive infrastructure bill that was passed some months ago. They've carved out $1 billion specifically to go for land, water, and wildlife conservation, following the principles that are in the America the Beautiful initiative, which is the national 30 by 30 effort. So a lot of nice things are coming together here. This letter and all the suggestions in it it's going to have a big price tag, and everybody always wonders, how do we get to it? Well, maybe there are some federal dollars that could be tapped and leveraged to help do that. And I think with this level of detail too, it could serve as it could be modified into sort of internal formulations to approach local funders as well. I think it's got that level of detail. I think it's got that level of inspiration to it that we could use it to fundraise as well. So I'll end with those as my comments on the draft as I've read it. Thanks.
Thank you, John. I appreciate your review. Ted, you're next.
Yeah, hey, I always hate following Assistant Director Ragnar because it's kind of difficult to top him. But I am also an Illinois DNR employee, and yeah, I mean, this is just fantastic. And speaking with Ben at the Kane County Forest Preserves, we're going to work on, getting some educators. And one thing that some of you should know is I'm going to be wearing 2 hats for a short period of time, and then I am running for elected office. And I think, getting our elected officials right now, everyone is up for re-election, and they're looking for things to take the lead on. And that comes from the federal to the state to the local level because they did the remaps. And possibly my new role, I may be able to help on that end too. So just really excited to get involved in this on both ends, both as a DNR employee and as a potential, hopefully keeping fingers crossed, an elected official.
Wonderful. Well, good luck. Thank you. Kathy.
Yes, this is great. I think this is a super, super exciting way to tie the vision together for all the goal teams. So great presentation. I really, really like it. And I also wanted to reiterate or make sure that the same thing can be done for Wisconsin, Indiana, and Michigan. And we can just work across boundaries because this is a national effort, and it's a very, very exciting opportunity.
Thank you, Kathy. All right. The other thing I did see in the chat, as far as the ecosystem services valuation, Liddy had noted that there is with the metro area Canopy summary packet, so something to look at. So there are some data points and probably some others that we probably need to cultivate. Mark Bowman.
Yeah, well, I hope the connection to the hub here is obvious, that it should play a major role in tracking all of this, and I think is a great way to, and the connection to the story map idea I presented before as well. We can turn this into turn these slides into a narrative. So look forward to working on that.
I'm sorry, Debbie, I'll turn it back to you.
Just a really very, very short thing that when Dave Holman prepared the different, the separate map of Illinois for Chicago Wilderness, the Illinois portion of Chicago Wilderness, it became so obvious that each state has a different opportunity of contributing to 30 by 30. So I would love it if Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin would have their separate maps as well. And if we could all work to figure out how those states would be contributing and how we make this, just emphasizing Kathy's point, how we make this a full Chicago Wilderness working plan. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, well, great discussion. And so there is a time frame to get this turned around. And I think what we're looking for is support to advance this prepared document to IDNR. It will give the support to allow the group that's been drafting it with comments to be received to have the authority to go ahead and submit on behalf of the Alliance. So Debbie, would you or Ben, would you like to move that forward as to offering the motion?
Sure, I'm bad at offering motions, but yes, exactly what you said, Elizabeth. The draft as is there is our draft. We can add an appendix with specific recommendations. I believe IDNR would like it sooner rather than later. So.
Wonderful. Thank you, Debbie. And Ben, would you care to second that?
Would love to second that.
Wonderful. Excellent. So we
So
have
just a comment, if I could, I would really recommend that we include the specific recommendations. I think that should be part of the document.
Okay.
That's fine. I'll just need I think the 8 that you have there, Jim, are one set of recommendations. I think others would have other sets. Do people find it reasonable to say that send me whatever other recommendations you would have by the end of the week? I'll pull them together and just have it as an appendix. That's what I would offer.
Debbie, I spoke with Lindsay over at IEC, and she would also like to collaborate with us on the draft recommendations that we have to ensure that we're being consistent. And there may be some ideas that they have which we can support in our letter as well.
Okay, so we have it first and seconded. I heard the appendix, make sure the recommendations are included, and then also that we work with the Illinois Environmental Council for collaboration on the letter before it is sent. You both, Debbie and Ben, are you good with the amendments to the motion?
The one thing that I ask is that we do make it by the end of this week. It's just that would be my only request.
Right, so we want to get this out by Friday, so that work has to be done. All right, so I'm seeing all hands up here. So we've got a motion and a second with the friendly amendment with those adjustments with end of week deadline. And again, appreciation for all those that have worked on this. All those in favor, motion by saying aye.
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 Those opposed,
Aye.
nay. Okay, we're good here. So you've got the green light. We're here to support you. Thank you so much for all of this. And this is a great model that we'll use to replicate and focus on our work. And for those that are with us as part of our representative members from Indiana, Wisconsin, we are going to be looking to you to help us to, again, find the contacts, see what's going on within your state natural resources team and go from there. So great work. Okay,
I
so
want to
that-
actually, can we just divert a little bit? Sheree Fisher has a conflict at 11:30. So can we bump up our Congress discussion to now and then come back to the rest of the agenda?
Okay, I can if she's going to. I did want to get to the America the Beautiful Coalition since it was related, but let's go ahead. Sheree will honor that and talk about Congress, and we'll jump back if everybody's good with that. Okay,
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Laura and I and others have put our heads together since the last Executive Council meeting. We did a survey that went out to all of you and to the whole mailing list for Chicago Wilderness and asked for some feedback about what people want in Congress. And as with the last executive council meeting, we heard resoundingly that Congress, as it's been structured in the past, is sort of a really valued and loved event, and that as much as possible, if we could keep the structure the same way, people would really appreciate that, at least in terms of getting the whole conservation community together in one place at one time. In terms of having frantic breakout sessions and a conference-like structure, there's less support for that going forward. So what we've decided so far, and we're putting this out for your comments and feedback, is that it makes the most sense to have a half-day event. The UIC Forum is available for November 3rd, which is the date that we threw out. That would be a Thursday. The timeframe options that we have discussed so far are an afternoon meeting that, Laura, do you want to put up the poll? Thanks. So it could either be 1 to 5:30, 2 to 6:30, or 3 to 7:30, or something like that, with the last part of the day reserved for networking and a reception. If you could, you should have a poll on Zoom right now. Please put in your preference for the time frame that works best for you. I have to vote too, or it won't go away from my screen. So I'll also say the next executive council meeting after this one will be in July. And by July, we will have already had to have a lot of planning done for Congress. So if you have big ideas, especially if you are new to Chicago Wilderness and have some ideas about how to plan a fun afternoon event that brings everyone together and promotes conversation about the key issues that are important to Chicago Wilderness, we would love to have you on the planning team. If you are a longstanding member of Chicago Wilderness and have strong feelings about maintaining some of the elements of past Congresses, then we also need you on the planning committee. So whoever you are, we would love to hear from you if you have ideas for how to plan Congress. And if you don't have ideas, but you're willing to be part of the worker bee team that's going to be planning Congress, please reach out to Laura. That's all I had for today. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. It looks clear. One more minute to complete the poll, but thank you, Cherie. I really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to planning that and the future field trips. So I'm going to end the poll right now. Okay, looks like we have a 1-5.
Thank you, Cherie. And thank you, everyone. And we're going to try, I know we have 11:30 stop time here. Okay, looks like we got the results here. There's preference of 1 to 5. Seems to be the top priority here. So I think the group has direction.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. All right, so going back to making up time here, we had a new item that was advanced. Jim Anderson, you had shared this with me, the call out for the America the Beautiful for All Coalition, and they have a call for participation in the steering committee, and that deadline to submit a representative, should we be included in that, is this Friday. And so information on this, they meet online, I guess, and they're part of a larger group. So clearly Chicago Wilderness, with all the work that we're doing in the 4-state region, probably should have a seat at the table. Jim, anything else you want to add on this?
Yeah, so one of the requirements is that you do need to be like either a president or vice president of an organization. And so that is one restriction that's there, but I do think that Chicago Wilderness should send a nomination in for someone from Chicago Wilderness to be sitting on that team. Now, whether we get selected or not is a question, but
so we need, I guess, the process here, since it was brought forward, and I know we've had certain team members, obviously very many that have been focused on the 30 by 30, obviously, so there's a requirement, there is obviously available capacity for someone to do this, and so I'm not sure the process, we have to make a determination of I guess, not accepting nominations for who would be interested. First of all, should we? Is there concurrence that Chicago Wilderness should propose to have a seat at the table? And then second would be, what is the process for moving a name forward for that process, since we have to send this in by Friday? So discussion. Is there a general, I see hands up here. So let me start. Stacy, let me start with you.
Thank you. I think it's critical that we are a part of it. I think that Chicago Wilderness is demonstrative as to how metropolitan areas are vital to 30 by 30 and America the Beautiful, especially where nature and people coincide, and the power of that. I think I would like humbly to request that I be placed as one of the nominees. Based on the work that I've done at the national level, the work that I've done to try to align Chicago Wilderness's approach with the 30 by 30 steering committee in which I sit. I have worked across state lines in Wisconsin as well as in Illinois to do a multitude of presentations to try to unite people behind common approaches, understanding the unique qualities that different organizations and alliances bring to the table. And I would be honored if I could represent Chicago Wilderness in that way.
Thank you, Stacy, for the nomination and your work on this area. Kathy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I'm not familiar with the coalition, and I'm just wondering who's spearheading. Yeah, who's pulling it together? Because there's lots of little 30 by 30 committees popping up here and there, and yeah, if you know more about it, I'd love to hear
so
it.
this is a coalition. The founding steering committee is the Green Latinos, Children Environmental Health Network, and the Wilderness Society, who are the point people on this initiative.
So it is something coming out of the Biden White House, and this would be the group that would be an advisory to the 30-30 effort on the national level.
Thanks.
That particular group does have a focus of environmental justice, which I think would also fall nicely under Chicago Wilderness, nature being vital for all people where they live. In the last group meeting of Green Latinos, when they really extended this out nationally to organizations, they stressed wanting to have people at the table from tribal demographics, from underserved organizations, representing underserved communities and whatnot. And so they are especially situated to be able to give voice to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion to the Biden administration. So I think it's an important coalition nationally to participate in out of the many that have arisen.
Thank you, Stacy. And it looks as like we've participated with them in the past. And I do think with our work that we're doing on JEDI, that is really important to our work going forward. So we've got a recommendation. Jim, anything else since you had brought this forward? I know you had expressed an interest as well. And is there anybody else? And then we can talk about process.
Right. So I'll just say that from my looking at the steering committee scope of work, it does go from all of the goals, and so it's very inclusive. So while there is going to be inclusive and diversity, the other things about reviewing grant opportunities is mentioned, supporting coalition fundraising. There's a lot of activities that are mentioned in the committee duties. And I would be willing to sit for and represent Chicago Wilderness.
So we have 2 nominations on the floor. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations for potential leads on this? And one last time, any other nominations? Okay, so we have, I'm hearing none, and we do have a timeline. Let me ask this for process, because this is something, and again, it's wonderful to have two great members that are actively engaged, willing to champion this. And so, but we need to advance one name, and maybe there's an alternate piece. Is this something that we want to take, or do we want to basically do a poll vote that we can take offline to everybody that's here today, or what would be, since this is new, or how do we want to do this, or we do want to just take a vote on the floor here? Again, I'm grateful to have both nominations advanced, but I need some help and direction.
Let's figure out how to do a vote. I think.
Kathy has her hand up.
Yeah, Jim, did you say that the person had to be the head of an organization to sit in the committee? Did you mention that?
It either had to be, from my reading and recollection, you had to either be an executive officer, either president or vice president of the organization. So I sit on Citizens for Conservation as a vice president. But I also think when whoever, whatever we set the nomination, it really is a nomination from Chicago Wilderness with a member that serves another organization. But we really have to, the nomination really needs to highlight the fact that we're submitting somebody from the Chicago Wilderness.
Yeah, they're representing the official, not the organization to where they're coming from, but their seat represents the alliance. And it does have a question. It says, does this nominee serve in an executive or principal leadership role for their organization? So I would interpret that to be, when we advance a name, that is our chosen nominee representing the alliance with the full authority. So it doesn't need to be, like, for example, myself or chair or one of our steering committee members to do that. And obviously there are those that are more knowledgeable and time to be able to do that. So I think whoever we nominate, they then are going to go full force in to be us, to be Chicago Wilderness. So I think we need to determine how we're going to vote and how we're going to handle this best to advance it. So we both have nominations, I suppose. How would we like to do this? Would we like to, and Laura, I don't know if we can do a poll on the spot here, that we could just do anonymously here for everybody's there. Is that something that you could put together while we go forward with the remainder and then come back to that?
Yes, I will try.
Okay, that would be probably, if everybody's in concurrence, that way we can kind of do it with those present, and then it will be recorded, but without roll call vote or anything like that. Is that is everybody agree with that process? Okay, let's see. Does that sound fair?
That sounds fair.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
good.
Okay, so while she does that, let's continue to move on. The Bell Bowl Prairie. So Alicia, I believe you were going to help us kind of frame that for us.
Right. So for those who may not know me, my name is Alicia. I work with the Nature Conservancy based out of Chicago, and here at CW, I help co-lead the government relations community as well as the climate advocacy goal work stream. So I'm not sure if Laura had any slides prepared, but regardless, I think I can summarize this pretty quickly. I'm sure that the Bell Bowl Prairie issue has already been on the majority of your radars. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time summarizing that, but according to Save Bell Bowl Prairie Coalition leaders, most recent updates indicate that construction start has been further pushed back to about midsummer because there's that other round of consultation process and environmental impact analysis with the Fish and Wildlife Service that has been postponed, and they are projected to finish that up at around midsummer. So we do have a bit more time there. But then rewinding back to early March, on March 11th, the government relations community received an action alert request from Save Bell Prairie representatives, and this action alert request was to circulate a sign-on letter I'm popping the link in the chat. This sign-on letter would go to a multitude of Rockford area stakeholders at all levels of government, municipal, county levels, all the way up to federal members of Congress and the Senate there. So we did circulate that action alert in mid-March, and giving individual Chicago Wilderness members the ability to sign on if their organization thought it would be appropriate. A digital copy of this letter has already been emailed to the stakeholders that you'll see listed at the end of the document, but they still have not yet sent the paper copies. So we do have the opportunity to sign on to that paper copy. In my opinion, this is a standard letter. There's nothing really different about this letter versus past Bell Bowl messaging. I'm not sure if Laura was about to share your screen there. But you can see in the link of the chat if you want to review that language on your own. I think it does make sense for Chicago Wilderness to sign on to this. I think this is, you can connect this to several of our green vision goals. I think that many of you have probably already reviewed this letter. Just to reiterate that if we were to vote to sign on to this would go on the paper copy. There already has been an emailed digital copy. So I'm not going to belabor the point any more than that. And I want to open the floor to any comments or questions before we make a motion. Going once, I'm looking, I don't see any hands raised.
Well,
Here we are.
Jim.
Yeah, so, I think this is a great thing to support, and I just don't think Chicago Wilderness as an organization can do it. I'm trying to remember if we had this in bylaws, but we have several members that are either regulatory or are involved in the Bell Bowl Prairie, and I don't think that they would be willing to sign on as Chicago Wilderness. And so, because there is litigation going on and because there is regulation going on, I don't think Chicago Wilderness as an organization, since those members, those organizations are members of Chicago Wilderness, that we can sign on. Now, every organization that's here can certainly sign on themselves. And so I would highly encourage us to do that. But I think there's just a logistics problem here of saying that Chicago Wilderness could be a signatory to this effort because of those roles of those member agencies.
Jim,
And
oh, go ahead. I was going to say, go ahead, and then I'll respond.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure it's clear that with that action alert that we did send around, individual member orgs did have the ability to do so. So I think that we did check that box there.
Right. Yeah. So when we've had these situations before, and the reason why we didn't just proceed and take it further than this, because, and this is some of the feedback that we've received from funders and others, is with the Alliance, we are representative of individuals from federal agencies all the way to local agencies that are elected official based, political, and we've got NGOs and other types of organizations in our mix. But when we've had situations, as long as the vote, which would need to be a roll call vote, and if the majority of the members, and so those that wish to recuse themselves, they don't need to participate in the vote, then if it has the majority of the vote, then Chicago Wilderness could sign its name to the document, to the letter, or to an issue, unless the group chose not to advance a motion forward. But that way, the organizations that could not vote would have the cover of being on record that they did vote no. But Chicago Wilderness could still have their name listed. Otherwise, the question has come up too, is what is the purpose? Obviously, we've talked all morning of what the value is for the Alliance and the work that we do, but on certain situations, taking a position, if we don't take a position, and that could be the decision of the council. So how would you like to proceed with this one? John?
If I could offer a quick thought here, and this is based on things we have done in the past. And I agree with Jim. So in particular, with respect to Illinois DNR, we can't be part of a letter like this. And what we have done in the past is for those members who do choose to be part or choose to be signatories to this letter, but still want their Chicago Wilderness affiliation and name in there, because it does mean something. Chicago Wilderness does stand for biodiversity conservation. It could be a letter that simply says, we, the undersigned members of Chicago Wilderness. So that name is in there. The members are listed in there clearly, as are the ones who are not in there who felt that they could not be part of it. So I'll offer that as an option going forward.
It's a good option.
And I think that for this particular instance, the clock is ticking. That will be something we have to raise later with other situations that arise. But yes, I think that that's a good middle ground there.
So with that, any other suggestions? And I would take that to move forward. If someone wants to advance this with the recommendation that the undersigned members of the Alliance, and then Laura being able to send something out, or Alicia to our members, if they wish to have, then they can opt in to put their name listed underneath under the Alliance brand.
I so recommend. I think that's a great idea.
Debbie, thank you for moving. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Maggie.
Maggie, thank you for the second. Any further discussion on this particular motion on the table? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor with a letter with the undersigned to be prepared and sent out. Again, another item that's got a deadline looking to be the end of the week here. Motion by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, so the motion passes. We'll handle it that way. That's a great discussion. Way to address it. And thank you for the conversation and perspectives. Okay, let's move along. Laura, do you have that poll ready?
I do. Yes.
Okay, want to send that out first, and then we'll move on to. Okay, so you have two candidates here to serve on this America the Beautiful campaign, Representative Access for All. Please put your votes in. All right, well, those polls are being submitted. I'm going to move on real quickly to the next item to get us caught up here. And that is, we have two more sessions with August Ball from Cream City Conservation, and has been doing an amazing job in working with our equity and cultural workshops here. So this Thursday we continue, and then we have another one that's upcoming in May. And following that, we will begin our roadmap. So here is just again a call out to participate. These conversations have been very powerful and enlightening. And again, it's one of those added value benefits for members of the Alliance, to bring that back to your organization. So I believe also August Ball, I don't know if we have anybody here today. Well, Debbie, you're with the Field Museum. Amy, I believe August is going to be receiving and recognized for her work as well from the Field Museum.
Yes.
Yeah. So I believe that's this week too, is it not?
The coming week. Yeah, I think it's coming Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah. So join us online for that, and then we will begin doing the roadmap. And the roadmap is going to be key in going forward. And again, looking for individuals from your organizations that are eager to be engaged with the roadmap process for this. Okay, the next item, Laura, I'm going to turn it to you. We've had discussion on executive council changes to our policies and procedures, again, with the focus of access for all. And are there barriers to participate? And so, Laura, you've gone through, we've talked about it, and a way to remove the barrier to become engaged with a financial resource right into executive council participation.
Yes, just to remind everybody, our previous policy was that our minimum contribution level to be part of executive council was $550, which we realize is a barrier to promoting inclusivity for many of our community partners. So I went through the policy and procedures and made these recommended changes. So I recommend deleting that executive council members must contribute dues at a minimum level as described in this section and be considered paid in full at the end of each year's due cycle to participate in the executive council. And then I also recommend striking the paragraph that says that this is dealing with our dues payments in general, that that we would remove members who are not in good standing financially, but that we would strike this paragraph for non-payment of annual dues and replace it with payment of dues should not be considered a barrier to participation in the Chicago Wilderness Alliance. Should an organization or individual wish to apply for a membership scholarship or adjust a recommended dues level, they should contact the Chicago Wilderness Coordinator or the treasurer to discuss. A scholarship application request form can also be completed online, and recommendations can be approved by the steering committee leadership. So that's that. Those are my proposals, which I would like to advance through this process.
Thank you, Laura. All right. Is there anyone that would like to make a motion to accept those changes?
I'll make the motion, Jim Anderson.
Jim,
I'll
thank you. Do I-
second Ralph Schultz.
Thank you, Ralph. Any discussion? So since this is with our procedures, again, here's the process of where we're at. And obviously with executive council, the only that again, some cleanup here, and I think this is great, is that we do require, and we have to figure this out. So I guess we need solutions here. In the guideline document, it talks about 50% of executive council partners eligible to vote. And so when we make to have a quorum or presentation, how do we address, do we change that to the quorum present at a meeting or quorum of that too, when we've got actionable items? Or would we still have that quorum, still 50%, it still say 50%, but as we,
I guess I would try to do it by email.
okay. So are we good with, we got any other discussion on the motion on the floor? We good with that? And so Jim, are you saying from this, are you okay with us taking a vote on the changing of the policies and procedures today with this group? We've had notification, we've done that, so we're good. And then take this vote and then going forward.
Yes.
Okay, all right. We ready to call the question? We good to call the question? Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor in accepting the changes to Chicago Wilderness's policies and procedures as proposed with opening up executive council membership, motion by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Okay, terrific. Those are approved. Thank you. It looks as if the poll came up. Thank you again, Jim and Stacy, for your volunteerism. Stacy, you will be advanced as our name to move forward. So we'll have to send you, we'll get all that completed and have a discussion to get you on board to represent the Alliance.
Thank you very much for your confidence.
Thank you so much. All right, let's see here. Moving on, we've talked about Congress. So Laura, well, team updates. Does anybody with time have any updates that anyone would like to share that we didn't cover this morning?
Okay, coordinators report for all the things that we haven't covered already. Coming up, there is the City Nature Challenge, April 29th through May 2nd. And we were really pleased that if anyone saw yesterday, we received a shout out in the Chicago Tribune and from Morgan Green. And Maria has been working to update the website with all of the locations that will be a part of the City Nature Challenge on April 29th through May 2nd. So if you have a chance, check that out. I can drop the link to that also in the chat. I did already share the goal team and working group resource list. I forgot to mention during that we really welcome and need everybody who is a goal team or working group leader to start using this as a resource and including their minutes and information in those files and folders, and that will make all of the archival process much easier. And thank you to Maria, who worked really hard to create that with me. So I really appreciate her help. This Saturday at the Forge, there's an Earth Day Summit, and Radhika Muralia and Tish Daniels from Chicago Park District will be presenting on Chicago wilderness, and they will specifically focus on Goal 5 and the work that they're doing. They'll be there at 10 o'clock along with Tony Perkwinkle and Arnold Randall and others, but we're really pleased to have the representation there. Finally, I will be working on a series of cafes, tree cafes, which is part of the IDNR grant that we received. In fact, after this meeting, we have a meeting scheduled with Lydia Scott and others, and I'm looking for feedback and ideas for ways to develop meaningful tree cafes for the region and ways that we can advance this work. So if anyone would like to participate or have a conversation with me offline, I would welcome their feedback. And finally, we have about 150 jobs and internships in our Career Center, and we welcome all of your organization's job postings. Maria has been active in pushing those out on social media. And of course, we always have the job resource board on our page. But now, this time more than ever, there is a need to fill these positions. So check it out, share it with your staff, share it with your organization so that you can get your postings on our site, as well as share it out for students, emerging professionals, and others that you think might be interested. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. We are busy, so much going on, and we've gotten so much packed, and my apologies that we've run over. Just quick announcements too. Again, our ask is that we're looking for individuals to serve on our work with our Green Vision launch with PCI. We're looking for other volunteers from your organizations to assist us as we begin the roadmap for our equity with Cream City Conservation. We're looking for obviously assistance with the Congress that's upcoming to help Cherie and the steering committee and everyone in launching that. And then of course, all the good work that's going to be going on to get that letter drafted and out towards the end of the week for that. So again, thank you for all of that. Also, when we meet again, which will be in July, it'll be that time that we're starting to look at the budget for next year, looking for nominations to the steering committee. So you've all been actively involved, but keep in mind there's other ways to stay engaged as well as the months go forward. So happy Earth Month, happy Earth Day. Lots of activities that we're involved with and the great work that you're doing. Any announcements for the good of the group that anyone would like to share before we adjourn this morning? All right. Well, thank you so much. I'll take a motion to adjourn then.
John, so moved.
John, thank you. Second?